Oh, it was a meeting of U.S. and Chinese business leaders. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross participating in a reception today for the Chinese vice premier. The meeting comes as the U.S. is considering new tariffs on Chinese steel and new calls for China to put pressure on North Korea over its nuclear program. Joining us right now, Forbes columnist and author of The Coming Collapse of China, Gordon Chang. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
So what are the first steps that should be taken here? What should the U.S. do in relation to China, and how much is South Korea going to help with this?
You know, I think that the Chinese, with regard to North Korea, have not been helpful. And, you know, this is important for the trade talks because President Trump in April said the Chinese would get a better trade deal if the Chinese were going to help on North Korea. Well, we know from his June 20 tweet that the Chinese haven't been helping or haven't been helping sufficiently. So that's going to color these trade talks. And, you know, they say these talks have been sputtering. And now they could come right at the end in the last few hours, but I don't really think so.
There's a big meeting that continues into tomorrow, and there's going to be some real notables there. Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan, Mary Barra of GM, also executives from Caterpillar, Walmart, ConocoPhillips, and from China, the Bank of China chairman, and also one of the state oil company leaders there. What do you think ultimately is the goal? I mean, what are they trying to get to, and how will this help us here in the United States?
Well, the Chinese, they want more access to the U.S. market. I mean, they've got almost all the access they want, but they've
really been bullying their trading partners for so many years, and that has really been part of the platform that we've seen from Trump.
Well, yeah, and you know, on the other side of this, Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, has been progressively closing off the Chinese market because he believes it should be reserved for China's own state enterprises. And therefore, we've seen this Made in China 2025 initiative, which is meant to close off 10 critical sectors. This is a very difficult conversation because we want more market access, which is the reason why all these companies are there, but the Chinese don't want to grant it to them.
Do you think, quickly, that ultimately there will be an historic shift in American policy on this overall? Do you think by the end of this we're going to see a real change?
Absolutely, because Trump has said, and he's quite correct on this, that North Korea is our #1 policy goal, and the Chinese policy has been subordinated to that. Right. The Chinese, if they're not helpful on North Korea, are not going to get a good trade deal.
Gordon, I want to pick your brain on this one. We're to another area, and this is a rising issue that we have with China. The United States long refusing to sell its most powerful American-made drones to most countries for fear that they could fall into the wrong hands and that they could ultimately be used against our American forces. But the Wall Street Journal reports that China is filling that void and actually selling models that resemble our own, of the Predator and the Reaper drones, to interested buyers at a cheaper price. Gordon, what do you think about this?
Well, you know, it's not just a question of cheaper price. What they're doing, as you say, is violating standards that the world wants to put in place. And the U.S. actually did negotiate a declaration last October. Chinese didn't sign on to it, which means that that declaration is worth very little because there is going to be this race to the bottom. It's just simply unacceptable.
Do you think that the U.S. should go and right now put this front and forward right now?
Absolutely, and I think that we should be willing to sell to our friends and allies, even though we may not want to, because we do not want them to develop relations with Beijing, and we don't want the Chinese to, continue this race to the bottom.
Gordon Chang, thank you so much for joining us.